Hello and welcome back to Let's Play Obduction. We've just gotten into Farley's Community Center, and there's all this fun reading material laying around, so let's start reading. If you don't like reading, if you don't like people reading documents found in video games, feel free to skip ahead, and we'll come across the other side. We'll see you at the end of this. Okay. Horrible, horrible handwriting here. I mean, it's neat handwriting. It's just hard to read on the screen. I shall document the curious events that have transpired with myself, my family, friends, and co-workers. Hartnell was a peaceful mining town founded by my grandfather and nestled within the red rock of the desert on the Arizona territory. Its 163 inhabitants heard a mighty explosion on the night of June 27th, 1903. I sent several workers through the town to verify that the explosion had not caused any injuries or damage to mining equipment. They returned and repeated that and reported that it must have been a loud clap of thunder caused by dry lightning, for they found no damage. It was not until the light of the next morning that we were amazed to realize something profound had indeed occurred. As at some point during that night, our entire mining facility and a large circle of the land around it seems to have been scooped up and carried off to a completely different place, all without anyone knowing about it. Not ready for that one yet. Okay, so that explains the whole thing moving here. Second part of that. The entire landscape outside of our circle of desert could only be described as alien. Large floating rocks could be seen in the distance. No one had ever seen anything like it anywhere on Earth. We fully explored our new surroundings, hoping to find a way home. No way home was ever found. In fact, we soon discovered what we take for granted now. Not only could we not get back home, we also could not access the landscape outside the desert. Curiously, we discovered that a flow of water was provided from a high point of rock, and we discovered a small tree growing in the very center of the circle. Our central tree, that is so important to our lives here, was just a mere sapling back then. Species description: Mofang. We've heard about the Mofang before. They're the ones that we're at war with or something, or having a battle with. Through ambassador seeds, the Mofang were the first non-human species humans were introduced to. And Liang was the first to call the alien a Mofang, impressed with their advanced ability to imitate our sounds, movements, and mannerisms. Although they have a name for themselves, their language is mostly unpronounceable by humans. As a result, and because of their mimicry abilities, communication with the Mofang is primarily accomplished by their learning human languages, rather than humans learning to speak Mofang. They have been able to learn almost every human language represented in Hunrath, enough to provide functional, if rudimentary, communication. The Mofang basic external morphology is remarkably humanoid: bilateral symmetrical tetrapods, bipedal, head with anterior facial features, mouth, eyes, nostrils. Other external features include minimal body hair and raised dorsal protrusions. Constitution is somewhat frail, due apparently to their thin and lightweight internal structure, but internal investigation has not been possible. They have ample cranial space to account for a substantial brain, and their intelligence is impressive, as evidenced by their advanced technology. And there is a drawing of a Mofang. Eri. After a certain level of maturity and health of the tree, a passage opened at its base. This passage allowed contact with two additional species. The first contact was with the Eri. The first contact revealed the Eri to be large beetle-like insects. We were unable to communicate directly with them in any way, but they appeared to have some rudimentary level of intelligence. It was, I can't pronounce that, Laurent Toth, who first made the journey through the heart to Kapdar and named both the New World and the inhabitants. The Eri have three distinct variants that have come to be referred to as barnacle, beetle, and polyarch. Although their morphology is dramatically different from humans, their internal systems, like all of our neighbors, are supported by similar atmospheric composition and basic nutrients. In their barnacle stage, the Eri are completely immobile. The Eri stay in this egg-like development state seemingly indefinitely. In order to hatch, they must be in proximity of a polyarch and fertilized by the beetles after a certain stage of maturity. The beetles are the eyes and ears, hands, and feet. With only a minimal nervous system of their own, they are essentially the sensory extensions of the immobile polyarchs. They are able to execute simple commands, but apparently have very little in the way of individual sentience. And there's one of those bug things we've been seeing flying around. And I think we've seen the barnacle egg stage on that rotating sphere in the middle of the far side of the wall. The Eri polyarchs are the intelligence and consciousness of the species. Although it was obvious that there was intelligence behind the species, it wasn't until Caroline Farley began spending large amounts of time in close proximity that deeper communication began. With the room nearby, Farley was the first to communicate non-verbally and learn much about the species, including some historical information. The Eri species survived in their world, while several other sentient species came and went. Among them, an ancient species who formed a deeper relationship with the Eri, carving temples and dwellings for them in the rocks. And later, a more recent species that took over much of their homeworld. This latter species was especially adept at mechanical construction, using it mostly to capture and process large flying creatures using the beetles as bait. And that's polyarch, I believe. Or the inside of a beetle, not sure. Villain. The final species to be discovered were the Villain. The Villain had been communicating with the Eri for many years through ambassador seeds, but became part of the larger community very shortly after the Eri. With a large and imposing frame and a form of communication based on a complicated, multi-voiced, low-frequency rumble, the initial introductions were intimidating. After several attempts, Amelia Vidal was able to show some rudimentary communication and began visiting the Villain in Marais, which she named, on a regular basis. She discovered a complex and amazing society that was able to use their technology in unexpected ways. They had the ability to quickly transform their world using extruded structures based on some form of complex miniature substrate material. Unlike the other worlds, the Villain sphere is scooped out of a Villain resettlement group that was preparing to set off into space to find a new homeworld. This was their way of life, to put themselves into stasis and scatter themselves through the stars. As mentioned previously, their appearance is imposing, standing about 9 feet tall with a distinct reptilian resemblance. They have 6 limbs, 2 muscular legs and arms, and a smaller set of arms. They control every aspect of their technology with their vocalizations. But over the years, they have created control panels based on their number system that allow other species to easier access elements of their technology. And there's a Villain. Note the extra arms there. And I think that's the end of this book. So there's 3 other species, and one of them doesn't like us. I think this tablet here deals with communication. Yes, we take communication for granted, even with the varied languages we find here in Hunrath. But when we suddenly find ourselves among other intelligent species who don't share our culture, history, DNA, or vocal cords, it requires a huge amount of effort for the beginning of rudimentary chatting. This quick overview will set the stage for what to expect when communicating with our neighbors. The Mofang were the first non-humans we met. With at least some level of similar physical vocal generating abilities, they picked up human words quickly. This early mimicry resulted in what the species became to be called. Even though they were able to mimic simple words and simple phrases, it became evident over the years that huge grammatical differences were not easily overcome. Some have proposed that the difficulty may have arisen because the Mofang insisted on attempting to learn every human language, and as a result were never able to lock onto any consistent grammatical structure. Nevertheless, in spite of the rudimentary sentence construction, it has been very easy to communicate, and it has been unnecessary for us to learn their language beyond a few simple phrases and proper names. If you'd like to learn more about communications with the Mofang, please contact Tam. Well, we can't contact Tam because the CW and I are the only ones here right now. The Villain have presented a particular communication challenge. From what we can gather, they produce sound using two large reed-like structures inside opposite sides of their heads. The vibrations generated are channeled to resonance chambers in the skulls, where they are combined into a complex low-frequency dual tone. Their low-frequency bitonal sounds are not only hard for humans to hear and resolve, but impossible for us to mimic. And the Villain's hearing is also oriented towards low frequency, so they're unable to hear most of the sounds associated with human speech. Therefore, communication with the Villain has relied on technology. They have adapted control consoles which the Villain fluently control with vocalization for use by other species. Over the years, some individuals of other species, including a few humans, have learned to communicate very effectively using this method. Humans have been able to pick out some higher frequency characteristics of certain key Villain words over the years, and although we can't speak to them in a way the Villain can understand, we are occasionally able to hear and recognize these words when spoken distinctly by the Villain. If you'd like to learn more about communication with the Villain, please contact Vito. Again, there's nobody else here. The Eri. None of the stages of the Eri morphology have any vocalization apparatus. Because of the obvious synchronization of the barnacle flash and the ability of the pawns to provide for and address the needs of the polyarchs, it was assumed the species could communicate effectively. It was not until Farley began to spend large amounts of time in the polyarch antechamber that the first clues to this communication became evident. After months of research, Farley began to have limited success with receiving some kind of simple messages that were coming from the polyarchs. It is apparent now that the polyarchs had been attempting to communicate the entire time, but they themselves had been experimenting with various channels until they finally got a response from Farley. After this breakthrough, others were able to learn to tune in to the polyarchs and learn to listen. Both the polyarchs and the pawns have a simple organ that can sense human vocal frequency, enabling to sense simple responses from humans, but over the years, Farley was able to learn to speak to the polyarchs via a related form of extrasensory transmission. If you'd like to learn more about communication with the Eri, please contact Farley. Again, nobody else is here. Alright, anything in this blue folder of doom here? Apparently. Seed information. And this is kind of faded. Ambassador seeds were first documented about 150 Earth years ago. They occur about once every 400 days if the trees remain healthy. Natural seed swaps occur between pairs of seeds that, we now know, drop simultaneously from healthy trees in paired spheres. When each seed was touched by a species in a sphere, the swap occurred, sending an ambassador from each sphere to the paired sphere. Location of the swap is defined by the location of the pairs of seeds. After the first swap, the seeds recharge quickly, allowing for a quick return. First meetings were intense but naturally short. It was quite a surprise for both the Mofang and us. Over time, the seeds required more time to recharge, producing longer visits between species. Collector seeds. Everyone who arrives is familiar with the collector seeds. The bright light that we were all drawn to right before the event that brought us here is a collector seed. What new arrivers may not be aware of is that these seeds, like all seeds, come in pairs. When the tree drops a collector seed on the ground, it signals that its twin has begun its quest for a new being. That search may take hours, or it may take years. When an appropriate situation, a natural threat of death, is found, the seed activates and swaps a smaller but varying sized sphere from Earth, or whatever appropriate homeworld, here to Hunrath. As Hunrath became more populated, we would watch for a newly dropped collector seed, collect it, and place it in the entry canyon area. This allowed us to provide a more predictable entry experience for new arrivers, and provided a single area to collect any resources that may have come along with the new arriver. And make sure it doesn't take anything with you that it shouldn't. Unlike ambassador seeds and mother seeds, collector seeds do not seem to survive. The inner core is spent, leaving only the lifeless outer husk. Mother seeds, postulated but unverified. First suggested by Alima Hansen, or Hamsa, 2232 BH. The notion of mother seeds extrapolates the behavior of the lesser seeds to a superseed. She posited that the process that actually created the paired spheres was similar to all other swaps, but on a much grander scale. The idea is that two seeds from a mother tree were scattered on the galactic winds to find appropriately similar environments. When matches were found, some process was triggered that swapped portions of landscape between vastly different worlds. Alima further noted that the trees' locations in the center of the spheres suggested that the trees grew from these mother seeds. Because of similarities, it has been conjectured that reswapping the entire environmental sphere might be possible with a larger scale version of the Ambassador Seed Machine. Okay, interesting. So the thing that grabbed us off the lake shore was a collector seed, taking us here, which is why we ended up in that entry canyon all the way over there, where we first came in. All this paperwork junk on the floor is unusable. Those books are uninteresting, apparently. There's cards. Okay. And here's a diagram of the whole process. Seed pair, find planets with similar atmospheres. Earth and Soria, which is labeled Mofang. Swap, will tree from seed, question mark. Heart connected, path open when mature. Heart superposition, 4 species meet. What happens at fruition? Swap where, home when, maybe dead. More seed pairs scattered throughout the universe. Why scattering? So this has suggested there's a heart under the tree that may be connected to all of the 4 planets here. And this also suggests that what's outside the dome, that weird purple alien landscape there, is actually Soria, which is the Mofang world. Last thing I think to read for a while. Welcome to Hunrath. Please give us a bit of information about you so that we can get to know you a little better. Name, date you came from, please use 4-digit year. Where you came from, country and city. Circumstances under which you were taken, please note any dangers you noticed. Emptied and filled, 12,000 AH, 13,000 AH, 15,000 AH. So they're filling this book up, changing out the papers every 1,000 or 2,000 units of time. So I doubt those are years. Samuel something or other. Karam. January 2017. Mamakana, Madagascar. I had just arrived and was driving my supply truck along the coast south of Mama Kana, when I recall being washed away and the seed appeared. 13257 AH, male 61, Visual Regen Bogen, I don't speak German, 1942 March from Lubeck, Germany. The last thing I recall is a large rumbling when I was hiding in the cellar of a vacant building. I ran towards a bright light in a stairwell. 15841 AH, male 26. Okay, so a 26-year-old male from 1942 Germany. That could be a German soldier pulled out of World War II. Maria Gallego, September 1988, Cozumel, Mexico. On my boat and bad storm, 16023 after Hunrath, female 46. And that's also unclear on the screen. Jang Qiuyu, Kia, I don't know. Very hard to read with that writing, that stroke weight, and pixelization on the screen. March of 2042, that's in the future. Portland, United States of America, skiing Mount Hood, 16717 AH, male 37. So, if we look at the years, 2017, 1942, 1988, 2042. So there's some sort of temporal anomaly, temporal discontinuity going on here too. It's pulling people in out of order in time. So that's also interesting. All right. And I think that's all that we're going to get done here in this 25-minute or so episode. So when we come back, we're going to go and see what happens when we try to go through the dome wall. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.